Hello, I'm Adam Olivero, and welcome to MWO Sports. Nope, I am not Ryan Drury. I'm sitting in today for the guys as they're taking the week off, and we decided to bring you our best interviews from this year's MWO Sports. And there's some good ones here. We'll have an interview coming up with Rod Black that we recorded previously in the year on show 30, and that will talk about Rod's involvement with the TSN and the CFL and his family's history in baseball. It's an interesting interview. We'll also have an interview coming up on Julianne Stolle as she came back from the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. That was on one of our previous shows. And then coming up, we will also have an interview with the Listowel Cyclones head coach, Jesse Cole, about the upcoming season for the Listowel Cyclones and what's happening in junior hockey around the area. So that's the first interview you're going to hear. You'll see me pop back in and out throughout the show. But first, here comes the interview with Jesse Cole from the Listowel Cyclones on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. Ryan Drury alongside Clarkie and Steve Savern. We're very pleased to be joined by a great local special guest, the head coach of the GOJHL's Listowel Cyclones, Jesse Cole, is on the line. Jesse, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're doing well, my friend. We're really excited to see junior hockey again, particularly here in Listowel. Can't wait to get into the Steve Kerr and see you guys face to face again. That'll be a nice change of pace. How excited are you that the season's got a start date? We know that as of right now, anyway, we're going to play hockey again.
It's very exciting. We've been meeting as a staff over the last month regularly, and it's weird taking the year off. You're a little bit not on edge, but a little nervous right now because you want to remember all the details, preparing for camp and players and getting things taken care of. But very excited. We start. Our rookie camp starts the 16th Monday. We're going to have a couple exhibition scrimmages and get the guys back out on the ice and some of our rookies. So definitely looking forward to getting back into that atmosphere and enjoying some hockey again. And obviously excited for the players as well to kind of get back into it.
Jesse, looking at the players, and I know you've been busy in the off season, and there's been a few signings for a returning core. Who are you looking to lead this squad?
Yeah, we're a bit of a different look than I'm sure even for you guys from 2 years ago. We're very young. Right now we won't have a 20-year-old on our roster. We've stayed pretty young. We've got we felt a very good local group in the area, and then a lot of our older guys were in that process of going away to university, so it made sense to move them places where they could play. But returning for us, up front, Jaden Goldie is back with us, and Cam Knight is back as well. Those are our two O2s, so to speak, that are returning. There's a couple guys. Jaden Steele was actually signed with us last year, but with no season, you guys didn't get to see him. But there's a number of those guys that were committed to the previous year and signed that would have been with us if we had a season that obviously didn't get to play. So looking forward to see how they mesh with the guys in that way. And then on the back end, Cam Angst is returning D-back for us in O2, but we're fairly young back there. Again, a lot of our guys have kind of moved on with work and school. So Cam would be the only returning D from the team 2 years ago. So for the rest of the guys, it's pretty young and a lot of opportunity ahead, and looking forward to that.
Jesse, how hard is it to look ahead to the other teams in the division with just taking a year off, or even you at that point yet? You just concentrating on your own team at this point?
Well, concentrating on us for sure. But obviously there's no hockey, but you still have calls with trades, or you go over rosters, and it's been a different year. You really don't have access to be able to check out rosters and get on the registry to see who's there or who's returning. And so right now, besides, even you guys are on Twitter, I don't know a lot of kids where they've signed or where they're going, or teams have returning at this point. I know there's some teams in our league that had some very good 2000 age players that, you're disappointed for those kids. But coming into this year, I'm not exactly sure who's signed where or what's going on. So I think everybody's probably in the same boat that way.
Yeah, I imagine they are. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jesse, because it's not only a reset for you guys, but looking across the league, a new commissioner for the GOJHL, you have now Ayr in the loop, and Waterloo becomes Kitchener-Waterloo. So a lot of changes that fans can look forward to. And, how does that fit into the mix, especially with Ayr and their new program, and how competitive will they be?
I think Ayr will be very competitive. I've spoke frequently with Jeff Grimwood, their GM. I think for our league, it's great. If you were to go watch their junior C games, that's a great building. They get a good fan turnout. I think for players playing there, it'll be a great experience for them. I think they're a great addition to our league. I think they'll continue to have success and bring some good players in. That's important for our league. Everybody wants to win, but I think you need to be competitive from top to bottom, right? We want to make our players better, our league better. And I think some of these changes with teams and in the organizations and moving to the places they have are only going to make the league better that way.
Jesse, you mentioned that a lot of guys are moving around. I mean, I know off the top of my head, Jonah White, guys like that, Trent Verbeek, they're going to go play in Hanover. So we are going to see some guys from the last time we saw the Cyclones on the ice still in the local junior scene. But you mentioned even the young Steele kid that you guys signed. I mean, you guys were moving and shaking last year, hoping that maybe hockey was going to come back. How difficult was that for you as a coach and a guy who's facilitating these moves, having to turn around and, talk with guys about not being able to come back and play and knowing that some of the guys, like you said, you're never going to see in a Cyclones uniform, and some guys that you had been coaching for a couple of years, it was their last time you'd ever coach them. I mean, how difficult was that?
Yeah,
the conversations.
Our 2000s were Verbeek and Coops and Mo. That was tough. Beaker was an AP for us when we won Starling Cup. He scored that big goal for us against Waterloo in Game 7. And then, Coops and Mo both went to a Starling Cup with us the following year. And were very big pieces of the organization and gave us everything they had. It's tough because you feel for those kids. I felt for all the 2000s. I wish they would have been able to have an extra year to play. Regarding those guys, I'm happy Beaker made the decision to want to play C to continue to play. I know with Mo and Coopsy, they're kind of focusing on some school stuff right now, but I think we'll see Coopsy probably for sure, and even Mo around at times this year. I've kind of reached out to them about attending some practices and even helping out and being around the guys. I think they're good people to have around the organization when we have a young group to come in and they know how it works. They can work with us on the ice at practice and help out and be involved that way. So we're looking forward to that.
Jesse, unfortunately, COVID, of course, still around. How much more difficult is your job now? And are there any protocols in place with vaccinations, with players, staff, and fans if they get into the building?
League-wise, Randy Petrie would have the full info on that. I know regarding our organizations, we are making it mandatory for our players to have it. I know I'm getting my last one here within the next couple of days, and very serious protocol. We want to make sure we're following the rules there at North Perth and when our players can come in the rink. And it's kind of adjusting to that stuff. Normally for a training camp, if we're on the ice at 7, the players would be there at 5:45 for a check-in, but obviously protocol now, I think it's maybe 20 minutes they're allowed in the rink before. So trying to make sure everything's set up that way and there's no issues with the dressing rooms and whatnot going on there. So it's doable. You want to play hockey, so it's doable that way, and you're willing to go along with everything they suggest as long as you can play. A little bit of a different year, I'll say, scouting wise and recruiting wise. A lot of times coming into camps, every player, you've seen them play enough, and coming into our rookie camp, we have info, we know every player, but we weren't able to see all these kids play live last year. So that's something that was a little bit different and new for us and a new experience to try to learn from and see what comes out of it.
Talking about player safety, Jesse, what about, off-season training regiments? You don't want to hit the ice cold, and I know you have some training camps coming up, but have the players been able to do something away from the rink to keep themselves in somewhat of game shape leading into the start?
Yeah, and that's something, honestly, a good question I've been thinking about quite a bit here when we be getting together with our staff to discuss camp. I know for sure a handful of kids have started to skate recently. I think they've had some good skates, maybe up on Soundway, some of our Highlander kids, but I haven't heard much else. I think a number of our players are actually going to starting their summer power skating in the middle of training camp. That's when things are starting to open up. So I don't think there'll be a lot of guys. Some guys might not have been on the ice at all. Hopefully they were able to do some kind of training at home, if not at the gym. But with us starting the 16th and, if the season was scheduled to late September, it gives us a month to hopefully kind of get guys in shape and get that conditioning going and work those cobwebs out, hopefully. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it won't be a pretty first couple of days of camp, which is expected with the time off.
Jesse, I want to ask you finally, you mentioned about skill development and making guys better and sending them up levels and everything like that. The GOJHL continuing its quest to be designated a Tier 2 Junior A league. At last count, they had thousands of signatures on a petition. They even had former players from the league, guys like Jeff Carter, Mark Scheifele, lending their voice of support. Jesse, you've played a lot of different places. You've seen a lot of hockey, played in it, coached it, been involved at just about every level. I mean, what is your opinion of that? Are you supportive of it? And in your mind, is the GOJHL a Junior A league?
I am supportive of it if it's going to continue to make this league better. And I think all leagues are good. But we've had in the past, I won't mention names, but players that have made the jump to go Tier 2, and the discussion was, we're going because of the Junior A name. If Listowel was Junior A, we would never leave. So I think competitive wise and development in our league, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we've got a lot of great hockey players in this league. I think sometimes because it's given a letter B, obviously it's talked down upon or not ranked as high. But a lot of times when people come to watch, they're, the general commenters are very impressed with the talent in this league. And we've always known that. If it's going to make the league better, it's going to keep these local kids around to play here. I'm definitely all for that if that's the steps that needs to happen to continue to improve the GOJHL.
Well, Jesse, we don't care what letter the league has next to it. We're just excited to get back in the rink. We love covering the team. You know that. We love interacting with you guys and the players and the staff. Can't wait to get back inside the Steve Kerr and see you guys on the ice. We really appreciate you doing this, man. Best of luck leading into camp, and we can't wait to see you, man. Best of luck.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate this and look forward to seeing you throughout the season.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate it. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Ryan, Chris, and Steve, for a wonderful interview with Listowel Cyclones' Jesse Cole about the upcoming season that is still due to start. And make sure you listen to the games on CKNX and CKNX.ca, as Ryan and Steve will be there bringing you those games from the Steve Kerr Arena. Now coming up, we're going to take a quick break, but right after that break, we will have Julianne Stolle from the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Julianne, when she did this interview, had just returned from her competition in Tokyo. We'll be back soon on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you as always by coolbet.co. Ryan Drury still here, and I'm now joined by Steve Sabern, and we're very pleased to be joined by a great special guest, friend of the show, her third appearance, I believe, on the show in a short period of time, and there's a good reason why. Lucknow's Julianne Stolle is with us, and she can add Olympian to her resume now. Julianne, how are you?
I'm doing well. Just fresh off the boat. Just arrived back in Canada on Sunday, so still getting used to the time change.
Yeah, the jet lag would be pretty severe, a 13-hour difference, but I'm glad you're adjusting well. And speaking of adjusting, I mean, tell us a little bit about your experience going to Tokyo and being an Olympian for the first time and adjusting to that type of level, that type of mindset. What was it like for you, your whole Olympic experience?
Yeah, it was incredible, especially for Olympic debut. I mean, I have no other comparison to go from, but everything in terms of the organization, just the whole country. Like, I mean, Japan put on such a show, and obviously the restrictions and protocols in place made things a lot more difficult for them to host the games. But from the athlete standpoint, it was really incredible how they orchestrated that. And I just felt very fortunate to be competing. And although I wanted more in terms of performance, that was the best that I had on the day, given the conditions. And but the village and everything leading into the games, everything had really gone smoothly. So I only have positive things to say, and I hope that this is just the beginning.
Take us through, I guess, the lead up to the race. What was it like getting to the village and then getting, I guess, settled and ready to run?
Yes. Oh, so we had spent a couple weeks prior to heading into Tokyo. We were in Japan, in Gifu, at a holding camp. So Athletics Canada had arranged that in a few years prior to. So that was all already organized. And luckily then we could get adjusted to time change as well as the heat leading in. So we were only allowed into the village 5 days prior to competition, and we had to leave within 48 hours after our final race. So it was a pretty tight timeline. But we were able to experience everything. I mean, the village itself was amazing. I mean, you can, go get your hair done or your nails done, and just the dining hall, everything, the whole experience is just like overwhelming, in the best way possible. And, I guess the way I could describe it, it's just like a university campus, essentially, with everyone mostly between the ages of kind of 20 to 30. And it just happens that everyone is the best at what they do, and everyone is just super athletic. But the experience and I just did my best to try and take it all in, but still be focused on sort of the race and managing your emotions and just getting ready for the start line.
Julianne, what was it like for you to be over there at a time when Canada is really starting to do well in terms of the medal count? And we've got people over there breaking records. It's been pretty impressive, the showing for Team Canada. What's it like in the village and being around other Canadians while, other Canadians are raking in some silverware? I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, the energy is incredible. There's just so many talented athletes, and outside of athletics, I mean, we sent 370, which I think is one of the biggest teams that Canada has sent, with the deepest fields that I know of. And especially in the track and field events, it took the fastest times to just qualify to be on this team. So I was under the impression that this was going to be kind of a high performance Olympic Games for us. And, with so many races postponed and these games being delayed a year, I think people were just ready to perform. And it's amazing to have that kind of caliber of team going in. And I think I sort of just drew from that. I think the experience of other athletes having been in Rio prior to, I just really kind of, question and just tried to get as much information as I could so that my expectations were sort of set going in and I knew what would be expected.
Julianne, can you take us through the race? And I guess, from the moment that you got out introduced onto the track and kind of what happened from there. I know you had a very large following across the area. Take us through those moments and what was going through your mind at the time.
Yeah, I got really good advice from one of the fellow Canadians. She had just said, once you enter the stadium, she said, just take a moment to take it all in, because you're not going to remember anything from the race, but you are going to remember walking into that stadium for the rest of your life. And I think that just really sat with me, because the feeling of walking into that stadium and never having raced in such a grand kind of opening sort of walk in, and everything about it is just elevated. And I think that was just a really special moment. And I knew, stepping on the line, these are the best in the world. So it's hard racing against a bunch of women who are all kind of like you, just, perform 5,000 meters. They're going to be as fast as, you can expect. But you really just try and race people, not names, and not get too fixated on times and rankings going in. So because of the conditions, I expected it to be a slower heats going into the final. It wasn't that way. It was one of the fastest semifinals that they've ever had. So it was under 15 minutes in order to advance. So that was really eye-opening. And I think it was tough just coming across the finish line. I mean, I did everything I could, and I know that I wanted to be proud of the race that I run, regardless. But just walking away from that finish line and knowing that I wouldn't be back at that stadium or on that track, and just kind of heading up to the media and off to the warm-up track to do my cool down. That was sort of an emotional moment, but also just, you did it, and now you can call yourself an Olympian, I guess, for the rest of your life.
You certainly can. And I mean, like Steve said, it's incredibly special and a great story for our area. I know a lot of people have been paying attention to your journey and are extremely proud of what you've accomplished. And the journey's not over here because, I mean, we're in a unique scenario, right? Where, like you mentioned, since this one got delayed a year, the Olympics now are only 3 years away. So I guess it's right back to putting the nose on the grindstone. I mean, where do you go from here? What's next? How do you prepare?
Yeah, I'll definitely take some time off. I haven't ran in the last few days, and I think it's just more emotional than physical, really. It's just sort of resetting and kind of getting your bearings again. And then heading into the fall season, I think just sort of a rebuilding, looking forward to kind of the next 3-year cycle. But there are 2 Worlds and a Commonwealth Games coming up. So there are lots of competitions to look ahead to, not just Paris. But I think I really want to dedicate this next sort of term, I guess, in my career to just focus on running.
Speaking of the support that was pouring in across the area, were you able to catch a glimpse of some of the photos and images that were shared on social media? And did that give you, I guess, a sense of home at times when you're away?
Definitely. Yeah, no, it was overwhelming, the support, and especially from Lucknow. I mean, they just like decorated the town, and just being in Japan, you feel so far away, but then just seeing those, messages and posts and everything, it makes you feel connected and kind of reminds you why, it's pretty special to make it to this level. And, I don't think there's been an Olympian from this area. And it's really neat to see. So I'm just very thankful for that.
Certainly. And I know a lot of people around the area are thankful as well, because like you said, I believe you might be the first Olympian, at least in the time that I've been covering the region from our area here in Midwestern Ontario, which is incredibly impressive. And I mean, if that is the case, and, you're kind of the first one through the wall for a lot of people around here, I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of younger people, a lot of high school students, particularly young women, who see what you've done and are going to want to, potentially try and follow in your footsteps in running shoes. And if that's the case, and any of those young ladies happen to be listening or watching this interview, what would you like to say to them? What advice would you pass down to the next ones?
Yeah, I sure hope so. I guess just enjoy the process. Like if you're enjoying what you're doing, the success will follow. And no matter, what stage you can compete on or where you go, I think the most important is just, training day in, day out, and whatever you do choose, whether it's sport or outside of sport, but just making sure that you genuinely enjoy.
It's interesting, Julianne, about the your success, but I mean the success of women athletes in general across Team Canada. Like when you look at the medal count and the top 5 finishes, the athletes are doing incredibly well. Do you think that is going to help continue to push athletics for women, and I guess get more people involved in developing and providing the resources needed to get, I guess, push everybody to that next level?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, representation matters. And I think that they ran stats and showed, majority are women who are competing at the games. So there is a shift. And I think just having, I guess, female role models, and that comes from coaches and stems, it goes all the way down to the athlete as well. But hopefully, when, people can see themselves in someone else's shoes, I think when you're watching that, and especially for such a, major competition, the Olympics being on TV, and a lot of the times this is kind of your one chance of showcasing what you can do every, 3 or 5 years, kind of in the last cycle. But that is a really important piece. And I think for any young female or male, it really is just, it's having those sort of role models and just being able to, see what's possible.
Well, I certainly think that you've set a standard for athletes in this area, like you said, female or male, and I'm hoping that a lot of people paid attention. I know they did and are inspired by what you were able to accomplish. We really appreciate you giving us your time prior to the games, now after the games, and Julianne will be paying a lot of attention as we all look forward to Paris 2024. It's going to be incredible, and we look forward to seeing you there as well. Congratulations on being an Olympian, and we really appreciate you doing this again with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Julianne Stolly, for sharing your moments from the 2020 Tokyo Olympics with us here on MWO Sports. And thank you, Ryan and Steve, for that wonderful interview. We wish you all the best in the future, Julianne. I'm sure I'll be watching you on the Diamond League competitions that are coming up. You've got a bright future ahead of you in track and field. Now we have one more interview coming up on our best of the best of this half of MWO Sports on Wightman TV, and we'll be going with Chris and Steve as they interviewed TSN's Rod Black, coming up right in here next on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. Steve Savard along with Clarkey, and another great guest with us tonight. Rod Black from TSN joins us, of course, getting set for a return to the CFL and many other things on his plate.
Rod, how you doing?
Doing great. If we're still doing the Zoom stuff, we can't see each other. It's been a year and a half, but finally, I think we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. So that's kind of cool. So finally, we got the Olympics. We got it. People are going back into stadiums. So I think everybody's kind of relieved about that.
You got that
Clark,
right.
You're looking good, by the way.
Thanks, man.
You're like the Benjamin Button of podcasts, dude.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think a lot of people, Steve, know that Chris Clark, and he and I go back a long way. I'm old. I'm an old guy. Chris Clark, a lot of people don't know, is 84 years old, and he's looking great.
Was he alive the last time the Leafs won the Cup?
I was.
He was there the first time the Leafs won the Cup.
And I can still beat you in squash, Steve, so just be careful. That I can do. Speaking of sports, let's talk about a couple weeks ago, Rod, your son Tyler announced as the first Canadian in the MLB draft going to the Milwaukee Brewers. I thought that was kind of fitting. I'm sure you like your beer. But what was that moment like for you, Rod?
Yeah, truthfully, it's still been a bit of a blur. I'm a little, I will tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable still talking about it because, I think it's a cool story and all of that, but frankly, it's like, people are trying to, link what Ty's done with what I do or whatever. And, he did it all himself. This kid is a, ferocious worker, a relentless, talented player, has been for a long time. Really deserves everything he gets. Yeah, he's my son, and I guess he was always kind of known. And unfortunately, this tag of Rod Black's son, which I'm sure he probably hated after a while. But now I'm Tyler Black's father, so I really like that. I really like that a lot, and it's exciting. He's down in Arizona right now. Just kind of learning the chops of rookie ball right now. I think he's going to head out in a couple of weeks to some low A or high A, and then. This journey has really begun. The draft is one thing, guys, and it's unlike any other draft. It's very complicated. There's a lot of money slotting that goes on, but when a team wants you, like Milwaukee wanted him, I think he's pretty honored, and we're obviously very proud. And I think it's honestly a perfect fit for him. So it's great to be drafted, but now the real work has begun. And only moments after he was drafted, we had a little draft watch party, and he said, "Yeah, well, now time to get back to work." So that says a lot about him.
Tell us about him. Position, hitter. What kind of hitter is he? What are we going to see?
Yeah, he's always been this hitter. He's got great hand-eye coordination. I think it's comes from playing a lot of different sports. He played a lot of when he was a kid. That's all he did was hit all day long as a wiffle ball player in the backyard, and could hit. And he was a hockey player and a football player and a basketball player. And he started at a young age as a pitcher too in. The Markham Mariners organization. Joe Bowen, as a matter of fact, he and I coached Tyler and David, his son. Then he went to the Prospects organization with Rob Butler and Rich Butler, who helped develop him as well, and ended up through that organization finally to the Toronto Mets, which has, really changed him as well and helped the development, a travel team. And then he ended up getting a scholarship down to Wright State University, a mid-major in Dayton, Ohio. Kind of came in as this unsung, Canadian, as they call them. They call all these kids down there the dirt balls because they play so hard and they're always the underdogs, and just learned and kept hitting and hitting. I always thought he was projected as an infielder. He was a great shortstop when he was a kid, and third baseman. I could see him maybe even going there down the road, but he's a second baseman, and did well in college. Was a freshman of the year in his region, and last year they lost it to COVID. Of course, they lost the whole season to COVID, which sucked. But and it allowed him to. He had a bit of an impingement in his shoulder from an injury, and allowed him to get it fixed through the Cincinnati Reds doctor, Kremchuk, and it allowed him to come back stronger this year in the fall. Yada yada yada. They had a great year. He had a great regional against the Power Fives, and was hitting against the likes of Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, who were drafted high, and he was starting to really, climb the ladder on the ranking scale. And a few weeks beforehand, we knew probably the low end was a second round pick, and the days before we kind of knew that he kind of snuck into the first round. So yeah, he's, like I said, it's all hard work. He's a talented ball player. He's dreamt about this his whole life. And I will tell you, I just know that, just knowing him, because I have another boy too, he's kind of on the same path. I hope I'm talking in a couple of years about Brody. And my kids are really sports oriented, but they're also high achievers. And I think, one thing about Tyler is that, he likes to dream, but he likes his dreams to become reality. So yeah, it's like I said, it's been a bit of a blur, but it's been all good.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say it'd be very interesting if Rod, you got back to baseball and caught the Milwaukee Brewers in Toronto and was able to call a game with your son in the lineup. That'd be the ultimate.
That'd be something. Yeah. It's still, like I said, it's still a long journey, to try to climb the ranks from low A to A and double A and triple A. But one thing about the Brewers is they develop players, right? And they love Canadians too. There are a lot of Canadian connections, but that would be something someday, although I don't think I could probably do it just because I wouldn't be probably the most objective guy in the world. And I will tell you, and Clarky knows me well, is that, we do a lot of Toronto teams, and I've done the Raptors, but I mean, we're generally we're very unbiased. Yeah, we want the teams to win and do well, but we tell it like it is. And, I would definitely tell it like it is, regardless if it was my son or my daughter, whoever was playing in sport. But that would be kind of cool. It is kind of cool too that I used to do the Jays when we had the rights at TSN, and Tyler and Brody were both around that a lot, and I think that also helped to form an impression in their minds about what it takes to be a big leaguer. They were around it a lot, and they saw how hard of a game it is on your body, but also on your mind. And it is a game of failure, and it is a game of success, and you've got to have a real even keel, you guys. I think he learned that, and he saw how hard these guys work, 162 days a year. So it's that would be kind of cool though and even if I don't, maybe I'll just call them in my basement anyway.
Hey, a guy who I know, and I'm sure Gordash, works for the Milwaukee Brewers. Just take us behind the scenes a little bit with the lead up to the draft. Did you have conversations with teams? Did Tyler? Yeah. Did your Tyler's agent? And did you talk to Gord at all?
No, I did not. And Gord and I go back a long way. And I think Gord's more of a consultant now. Yeah. And, Doug Melvin's there, who I have tremendous respect for too. No, but we had heard there were teams. It's weird draft, you guys. The way they work it is that you don't really hear. And Tyler's advisor, Jeff Gatch from PSI, is phenomenal. He's been great with Ty the last year. And, there were a lot of scouts out to watch him. They watched him a lot, and a lot of teams were on the radar. You hear rumors all the time. Tyler went to workouts. Guys, he worked out for other teams. We had heard that kind of, I guess, Milwaukee was interested. But honestly, the day of, I think Kumar Rocker, who you're going to hear a lot about, I don't think he knew that he was going to the New York Mets at 10 and probably made more money than the 5 previous guys in front of him. So you just kind of don't really have an inkling. And then until the night of, Ty was getting more information and intel, and the agents and advisors talked to the other teams. And the next thing you know, a deal is struck. He kind of told me a couple of picks beforehand what was going on. And yeah, it was do I have blue and gold on yet? No, I guess. and Bob Euchre's still there too. So, but it was funny too, because he went down for the signing and my wife went down, and that was kind of fun too for them, to Ty getting to go see the stadium, being around the Brewers. It was the same night the Bucks won the championship. So he felt the vibe. He felt the vibe in that city, which is a really cool city too. Like, the great people, nice people, but boy, hardworking, and just like that ball club.
Rod, you mentioned something earlier I just wanted to touch on, and it's a message of advice to other parents who are, have kids in sports. And you mentioned Tyler was a multi-sport athlete. Do you think that's important?
Yes, I do. And I know it's not going to happen. I guarantee you guys, Steve and Chris, I think that, I fear down the road. I mean, you guys, have been around sports for a while too. And, whenever I'm doing games, I always look through the bios, and I always, used to see, Michael Jordan, multi-sport athlete, LeBron James, I'm like, Wayne Gretzky, whoever, the great ones, they all play different sports. And I've really noticed the bios over the last years have changed, that a lot of those athletes who have succeeded and are getting on TV or getting into the big leagues, or, even to high college, to become high college level elite players, is that you don't see that anymore. And I fear for that. I think that's one of the reasons we see so many injuries with kids, because they're only one sport athletes. And I do think it's important. I think you have to concentrate solely, I think, at one point on your sport, which Tyler did when he got to about 15, 16. But I also think that you have to have a love and a passion, and all those other sports, I do believe, help the sport that you're eventually going to maybe lean to or play more. Everything helps. And to have a life in sport, I think we'd be so blessed and privileged. We need that right now, especially when this pandemic is over. How many kids are going to walk away, you guys, from sport? How many kids have lost their mojo because of sport? No sport, nothing being played, and no teammates. So yeah, I do believe in that, and I particularly believe that some kids, it's good to play an individual sport, play golf or tennis or whatever it might be, but also honestly play a team sport. It's not whether you make it or not, regardless. Again, this is nice that I'm talking to you about a kid that, got drafted in Major League Baseball, but that wasn't the goal for my kids to play sport. When my wife and I got them involved, it was to become, teammates, and to learn about losing and winning, and to help them down the road in their lives. I mean, that's what sport does. It helps craft and carve who you're going to become, and especially in the workplace, which, by the way, everybody's going to need a job, and just all those other things that happen. But yeah, I do believe totally in multi-sport. I fear that we're losing kids to travel teams and to elite teams, and they're saying, the coaches are saying at 12, no, you have to concentrate here. It's 24/7. Hockey, for instance, you got to play spring hockey. That's bogus. You don't have to play spring hockey. I've never seen any kid that played spring hockey at 12 and 13 excel in September. It doesn't make sense. I've been around that. I've seen that. That is complete BS. You whatever you play, it's a cash grab, I think, for many teams. 15, 16, yeah, maybe, because they're scouts. There are no scouts at 12 and 13. They're not watching anybody. It's a cash grab to play in a spring tournament somewhere. That kid should be going to play soccer or being out with their friends or golf or whatever. Change of seasons, get them out of a rink. And again, that could be get them out of a basketball court. But yeah, I just, the multi-sport thing is, to me, it's very undervalued right now. And it wasn't, but hey guys, we're all the same vintage, I think, except for Chris is at 84, turning 85. I do think that's how the way we grew up. We grew up that way, and I don't think kids are growing up that way now, and I'd like to see that changed.
Yeah, my son Paul is 15 years old, and he just hooked up with a bunch of friends to play softball, and asked him the other night, I said, so, what's the goal of this team? He goes, just to go out and throw the ball around and have some fun, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just go out and get back on the field.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting back, Rod, we're going to switch gears here and jump to the broadcast booth, because you're going to be returning and bringing us CFL football, which has been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's one of the very few leagues that lost an entire year, and could not play last year. Everybody else tried to get up and running in the CFL based on a lot of reasons, could not. The border, obviously, and American players couldn't come north. The financials, playing without fans. But yeah, I think the Canadian Football League fan has been well underserved. We haven't, and that doesn't happen very often because they're usually overserved. But I think, they've missed it, and we've all missed it. And it's just nice to have a league that's up and running again. And the players, I think the first couple of weeks are going to be a little spotty. But one thing about the CFL, even if the players don't have preseason and not a lot of time, there will be mistakes, but you have big plays, and you'll probably see some good run backs, and you'll see some bombs, and you'll see some of the gadgetry that goes on in the Canadian Football League. So the fans are going to have to be patient, particularly with the players and the refs. But hey, guys, something is better than nothing, and it's just so good that it's a shortened season, but at least it's going to be a regular season. It's going to be something, and the CFL is back, and that's just great news for everybody.
And who knows what team's going to be good? Like it's up in the air, right? Totally, in my mind.
Yeah. I would say the legitimate contenders still are the guys in 2019 that were in the Grey Cup in Winnipeg and Hamilton. They haven't had a lot of large scale changes. I think in Hamilton with Jeremiah Masoli now healthy and Dane Evans, who's going to be the number one there. Winnipeg's a really good team, and still they continue to load up with players. But you're right. I mean, the West is crazy, and you got so many different coaches that have changed teams, and you got Rick Campbell in BC and Jamie Elizondo in Edmonton, and he's with Trevor Harris now again. Paul LaPolice goes to Ottawa. It's very, very interesting. What's going to happen, but the West is so good. Calgary's always good. The Edmonton Elks, which we got to get used to saying, they're going to be strong. Saskatchewan Roughriders, a perennial powerhouse. I mean, they got a bitter feeling, a bitter taste in their mouth over, their loss a couple of years ago. It's hard to believe you're saying a couple of years ago in the playoffs. Montreal was improving. Ottawa needs to get better, and I think they will with Lapo there. Hamilton's awfully good, and Toronto's got a new coach too, and Ryan Dinwiddie. And what will he do? And everybody's kind of wondering with Nick Arbuckle and McLeod Bethel Thompson back, and the changes that Pinball Clemens has instituted. Pinball Clemens, forget about that, So it is wide open. And by the way, it's also a shorter season, so don't get off to a slow start.
Right. And I'm going to, once again, I'm finally going back as an Argonaut supporter. I boycotted because you guys probably don't remember this, but in 1873, the Argos released that boat logo and they brought it back finally. And now I'm ready to go support that team again. So that boat logo is classic.
Oh, it is. You're back. Oh, hang on a second. I got it. Careful. There's a shopper coming. Yeah, it is. It's cool. I think a lot of things. Clarkie. I think the move to BMO was a positive one, but there were a lot of hiccups along the way. I still think that east bleacher, the east stands are so always directly into the sunlight for a lot of games, and it kind of hurts them a bit. I mean, they still got to sell the game. Here's the other thing. I mean, as good as this all sounds, you guys, the three biggest markets in Canada for the CFL, three biggest cities, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, still suffer. And we've got to find a way to change that. In my mind, they try everything, concerts, all. Get back to the kids. Get back to the kids. Bring the families, get the kids. Like you, Clarkie, become a fan when you're young. Become a fan when you're young, because those kids are going to drive the parents to the games. Yeah. So there's still a lot of work to do for the Canadian Football League, but again, and certainly for the Argos in the market. But I think, hey, they got the mayor of Toronto, de facto mayor, could be the Prime Minister of Canada. If you can't get pumped up by Michael Pinball Clemens in life, folks, you cannot get pumped up.
Yeah. Rod, I had season tickets in 1982 because A&P sold them for $33. Had a whole season for $33, and that's what they got to do. They got to get back. And I know money's money now, but you got to invite the kids for sure.
Make it affordable.
Exactly.
Make it an experience.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there's nothing like a CFL player in the community. No athlete is like a CFL. They're in the community all the time.
Yeah.
We just got to realize they're in the community. And I know the league could get swallowed up in the big cities. But I just still think there's something there. And maybe it is, hey, if you can TFC can get their niche crowd and fill that all the time, certainly the Argos can. Certainly the Argos can. And that's not taking nothing away from the soccer fan. Yeah. But if they can do that, why can't the Argos? They've got to work at it harder. Get better. Be better every day.
Yeah. One of my favorite memories with my dad growing up, Labor Day Classic, Toronto, Hamilton, and then the Western Swing games, the doubleheader there. So you're right. I mean, that's what it was, a dad-son sort of thing.
Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to call so many Labor Day Classics. Look forward to this one this year. And that Hamilton market, you know, I really encourage people out there, listeners and your viewers, to, you know, if you've never been to there, I can't believe how many people, and, you know, we do a lot of interviews that including work for, you know, our network, haven't been to a CFL game. You know, go to a game, go to that Labor Day game when, you know, Hamiltonians just hate Torontonians, and then go the game the next week where the reverse is true, and the Argos suck chant, and how good the games are, and how intense and how deep that rivalry really is. I really encourage people to try to get out and just see it, experience it once, and you'll keep coming back. I really do believe that.
Rod, we just had Allison Bradley on talking about the Olympics and the Canadian women's softball team. One thing I'm missing this year is Rod Black and Brian Williams doing the Olympics. But have you been watching, Rod? Have you been watching? What sports do you like to watch?
Yeah, I got FOMO, you know, fear of missing out on FOMO, fear of missing out on the Olympics. And I'm sure Brian Williams does too, as a matter of fact.
Yes, no time checks. We need a time check.
Yeah. But there's nothing like covering the Olympics. And, you know, obviously the rights fees change all the time. And CBC does, by the way, a terrific job all the time. But it's different this year, guys. I do find it, and I love it. I love the and Clarky, again, you know me for so long. I don't think people always ask what's your favorite game or it's tomorrow, whatever tomorrow brings. I love every game and every sport. And I really have been enjoying some of the unique sports in this Olympics. I've enjoyed the surfing of all things. I've enjoyed the skateboarding. You know, again, you don't get every 4 years. You kind of watch field hockey or for some people even gymnastics, and you know they don't watch it all of the time. And you're watching rugby, sevens rugby. I have enjoyed that, and we haven't been able to watch softball, and unfortunately, we can't watch Canadian men's baseball. They didn't qualify. And because, you know, some Olympics, they just don't have softball and baseball. It's not going to be in the next one, and it won't be until probably LA when it comes back. I guess that's in 8 years. But, you know, to watch the women's softball team the other night, and, you know, that bronze was as good as gold. And by the way, they could have played for gold. You know, they don't get a chance very often. And I guess the ambivalent side of me in this whole thing is that, as great as this has been, you know, they're getting a chance to compete and getting a chance to go to the games. Yeah, it's under, you know, COVID watch. There are, you know, more cases every day, it seems, in Japan. There's cases for athletes, but, you know, it's sad that the fans aren't there because, you know, they really miss that roar, that, especially think about the 100 meters without that roar. It's just so different. I feel sorry for the athletes in some stretch, but hey, it goes back to what I said earlier about, you know, the CFL. Something is better than nothing. Like, something is better than nothing. And it's so good that at least, you know, this window for these athletes, you guys, is so small. It's 4 years. Maybe they compete maybe for 10 seconds, maybe a minute. Some of them all week long. To miss out, and after all that training, would be, to me, is sadder than at least competing with no fans. So it's not the best of situations, but you got to make the best of it. And yeah, I just love watching it. And again, here's the other one though, is I feel like a bat at night because you don't get any sleep. You know, you're watching in the middle of the night. I know my wife just loves watching. She stays up all night watching it all because I think we have pride in our nation. We have pride in that Canadian flag, but we also have pride in our athletes. So it's just so sad that we had to wait an extra year. And then think about this, and you know, we're watching the Winter Olympics in another 5 or 6 months, which is crazy in Beijing. And if it happens, so we're saying again, if it happens, so, but there's nothing like the Olympics. There's nothing like it, nothing like covering it, being around it. And the sense of Canadian pride is it's emotional. It's overwhelming.
Rod, before we let you go, really appreciate you jumping on with us tonight. But quick story. back in the early 1990s at Copps Coliseum, what was then Copps Coliseum in Hamilton, there was a hockey tournament on. Team Ontario, Team Ontario and Team Quebec, Western Canada, the U.S. And I was there as a second-year college student, and I was a food runner. And me and my buddy would run to a restaurant, grab the food, drop it off in the players' rooms, and the media room. So we did our run the one day, and we sit down to have some lunch. You come walking into the room to grab lunch and invited me and my buddy Will to sit down with you and talk. And yes, and that moment stuck in my mind.
Hey, Steve, it was only because I was trying to take your food.
Yeah, well, whatever the case,
I'm only kidding you.
At the end of the day, that was one of the key moments that wanted to keep me on track to get into broadcasting.
Hey, that's awesome.
I thank you for that. And it's one of my favorite stories to tell, that and seeing Clarkie on the squash court writhing in pain.
It was really nice that you brought us just before we went on the air the tequila too, because that really helped the broadcast that night. But hey, you know what? Honestly, that costs nothing. I've always said that stuff costs nothing. I hope you guys do that too, and you have done that. I would encourage everybody to it. We're all in this together. And I remember when I was a kid and doing the same thing, and I had mentors too. Then there were some that didn't do that, and there were in that era there were guys that didn't do that, and they kept calling you the Rook, and it was almost like a hazing that they that you'd have to go through. But then there were some that did, and I think about the late Don Whitman, who was a tremendous mentor, who did the same thing, and Don Chevrier, and I worked for Peter Young, who helped out a lot in Winnipeg, and all those national announcers that took even just a moment. It takes one moment, but and whether you want to hear it or not, it's nice to hear. So I'm glad that worked out. And look, now you're broadcasting from your basement, and you have to work. You have to work with Clarkie. So maybe you shouldn't thank me, man.
Well, things are looking up.
Hey, Bob McCown would have done the same thing. I guarantee it.
Yeah, he would have. Oh, he's a pussycat. Hey, Clark, I used to work. They always talk about Bobcat, and he can be a grumpy bear. But I used to do that primetime sports you were used to produce years ago, and I used to love it. I first moved to Toronto, and used to love being with you guys and being with him. And I remember, his on-air guy is the on-air Bob McCowan is 180 degrees from the pussycat Bob McCowan that we know and love. Completely different dude. Away from it, but I got a very passionate guy, and so that comes across big time.
Yeah. And definitely, Rod, your call comes across passionately as well. Look forward to hearing some of the women's hockey event coming up, of course, in August as well. So we'll keep tuning in for that. Rob, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank you, guys. I would be bringing food down to you right now, but I don't know where the hell you are.
It would be cold by the time you got here anyway.
Have a great one, you guys. Appreciate it.
You too, Rod. Thank you very much.
Well, what an amazing story that Rod Black has, and what an amazing story Steve shared with us of him meeting Rod Black as a young student in the media field. That's going to do it for us here on the best of MWO Sports from the first half of 2020. Again, I'm Adam Olivero, the producer of MWO Sports. I want to thank you very much for joining us. Remember, you can watch this show every Friday at 6 p.m. on CKNX AM920 and CKNX.ca. We debut 8 p.m. on Wightman TV on Channel 6, and we're also, look for us on YouTube on 9 p.m. debuting on YouTube. You can also find the podcast on all the best podcast apps that are out there. The podcast gets released the following week, and for all the updates, make sure you follow us on Twitter at MWO_sports. For myself, Adam Olivero, the producer of MWO Sports, and Ryan, Chris, and Steve, we will be back next week, but we want to thank Julie Ann Stolly, TSN's Rod Black, and Listville Cyclones' Jesse Cole for joining us on the best of the best review of this week on MWO Sports. Thanks for watching.